What's going on, everyone? This is Caedmon Cycling. Welcome back to the channel. And it's been a while. It's been a few weeks since I've been on Zwift, so it's good to be back. I hope everyone's having a good time riding inside, riding outside, wherever you are in the world. But it's been a rainy week, so I threw my bike back on the trainer and decided to join a Zwift Race and test the legs, see where we're at. So we're back at Crit City. This is an 8-lap race for a total of 9.8 miles. This is the bell lap direction around Crit City. As many of you know, this is my favorite place to race. So once I was back from a longer break, this was kind of the first place, the go-to that I wanted to jump back into a after-work race. So here we are. Goal first lap is just make sure I make the first split. So there's already a bit of a split in the riders. I just want to make sure that I get with this front group as we go across these rollers. And I've added this heart rate and power tracker to the bottom of the screen, so I can see it while I'm racing, but also hopefully it gives a good idea of just how much power and how even my heart rate is throughout the race. Of course, also how even my power is throughout the race. Make sure I'm not burning matches unnecessarily. Ideally, I think both that power monitor and heart rate would stay pretty flat or pretty level throughout the race. So we'll just start to track that starting this race and then going on to the future, see if we can learn a little bit more, digging deeper into the data behind the races and seeing how we can save power and have more energy left for the end of the race. So 8 laps around this circuit. Each lap is 1.2 miles. And again, just trying to stick with this front group for the time being. It's still early, trying to test out the legs, see where the heart rate is at, trying to just get a good feel for how everything's feeling this race for the next 9 miles, and just try to stay with this group as long as possible. There's actually no audio from this race recording. I just moved into a new place and kind of set up a new trainer room, so got everything set back up. But I think while I was recording, I actually missed the game audio. So unfortunately, no crowd noises, no ride-on sounds for this race. I'll be sure to get it back for the next one. But today you're stuck with just me and listening to my voice as we break down this race. Like I said, this is my favorite place to race. It's just such an easy place to jump into a race kind of on short notice, and it's easy for after work as well. If it's a weeknight and you really have less than an hour to get a workout in, I find this to be the perfect place to race. Get in a quick 15-minute warm-up before, and then these races generally last just over 20 minutes. I think for 9.8 miles, 8 laps around here, we'll sit at around 23, 24 minutes. And that's for Category C. So I race in Category C for anyone who's new here. As I continue to race more in Zwift, definitely working to jump up to Category B as soon as possible. But I'll go ahead and use this drafting boost across the rollers. There's a lot of surging that happens in this section of Crit City. So this is the very start of the lap in this bell lap direction. And it really gets strung out in this area. Maybe not so much early on in the race, but especially kind of getting into the final lap. This is an area where you see a lot of attacks being made. So I go ahead and use that drafting boost just to make sure I have the extra draft and don't get dropped going through this portion of the second lap. So what we'll do today, I'll show the first 3 laps and then I'll show the final 3 laps. So we'll just skip the middle 2, just trying to make this video go a little bit quicker. Don't want to drag it out too long, but still show a lot of the important pieces of the race. Again, this is still just very early on in the race, and I'm trying to get a feel for where my legs are at, how the heart rate's treating me. So just kind of a quick pulse check. Legs are actually feeling pretty good. So like I said, I've been away from Zwift for, I think it was 4 weeks, and really haven't been on the bike much outside either. So legs are fresh. the question will just be where's the training at. So early on in the race, they feel all right. But again, I want to make sure I can get to the end of this race with this front group, if at all possible. So legs are feeling all right for the time being, and then we'll check in on the heart rate. It's low 180s, reaching mid 180s right now. That's a little higher than where I want to be, especially at lap 2. Crit City is definitely where my heart rate will get the highest, just because of the nature of this map, the nature of the short races. There's enough undulations throughout the course that make it tough to recover. So once my heart rate gets up, it's really tough to recover on these short races. And I think we'll be able to see that in this graph at the bottom as well. My heart rate is that top red line. It seems like it's staying pretty steady overall. Not any crazy climbs or crazy hills, so there won't be big spikes here, but enough undulations to kind of keep it elevated with not a whole lot of time to recover. As we cross under the start-finish banner, finishing the second lap, still with this front group. But I'll start to monitor that heart rate. It seemed like it was getting pretty high there, 185 beats per minute. Now back around 180 is more where I want to be. Getting into the 170s would probably mean at Crit City that it's not a tough race for me. Low 180s is where I want to be early in the race. Definitely as we start to progress, get further on in the race, we'll see that get to the high 180s and 190s is where I'm really feeling it. So again, we got a drafting boost that time around, and I'll go ahead and use it on the roller section. Again, exactly where I want to be. Really no reason to make an attack yet. A lot of times in these Cat C races, you don't see many attacks being made until the very end of the race. I think a lot of the other riders come with the same mindset that I do. I kind of join every race just staying with the strategy and goal of staying with the front group as long as possible. I don't want to make any attacks. I don't want to burn any matches that I don't have to. So I'll generally try to stick in this middle to mid back of the pack. Not at the very back if I can help it, just because the draft dynamics of Zwift, if you find yourself in the wrong place at the wrong time, you could actually get kicked off the back of the pack pretty easily. So I never want to be kind of that last wheel. But I also try to stay more middle because I don't want to accidentally surge myself to the front of the pack. As we're nearing the end of the third lap, and it is getting a little bit strung out on that downhill. Looks like we have a guy ahead with the cone, so he's been flagged for a watts per kg that's a little too high for Cat C. So he'll be slowed down as the group moves by him. And we bunch back up together, so strung out, kind of going down that hill, but everything bunched back together. Again, everything that's happening early in the race is important to note, especially for the last lap. A lot of times at Crit City, these front groups will stay together for the majority of the race, and then starting in the last lap is where we either see an attack being made or it gets a bit more strung out. And it's important just to, while you're going through these laps earlier on in the race, to kind of note the sections where that happens. Anytime you can anticipate exactly where that's going to happen, it's really going to help you out on that last lap. So that was the first 3 laps. We went ahead and jumped to lap 5, and really not much has changed. So we're now 6 miles into the race. Sorry, just finishing lap 5. We're actually jumping to lap 6. 6 miles into the race, again, still with this front group. So this was an average sized race, I would say, for Crit City. We have 20 riders. And in this front group, we have, it looks like there's 10 of us. So half of the riders are still on this front group. Again, I got a drafting boost. I'll go ahead and use it on this roller section. For whatever reason, that just seemed to be the power up that I was getting over and over again here. Definitely not complaining though. I enjoy getting the drafting boost early on in the race. I think it definitely allows you to kind of soft pedal, at least while you have the boost for a little bit, and save some energy. So I like getting that drafting boost early in the race. But we have 50% of these riders still in the front group. So still a lot of selections are going to be made going into the final few laps. And at this point, it's all about saving energy. Staying with this front group, but saving energy, because I know that last lap will be the toughest. It's interesting. I think I've mentioned this before, but I think statistically within races across Zwift, the easiest lap is generally the second last lap, and then the hardest lap will be the final lap, which makes sense. It's like in the second last lap, everyone's trying to save their energy so that they can then exert it on the last lap, and that's just the nature of Zwift racing. So again, we see it gets a little bit strung out here going down this cobbled climb. I kind of let a gap open in front of me, so I kind of have to push it. I think I hit 300 watts, 200 watts. I didn't really coast down that cobbled climb like I do sometimes. I put out the power output, get the speed up, and we bunch back up with this group. So we've seen that happen a couple times now. Down that cobbled climb is where it gets strung out, and it's okay on this third to last lap to have that happen. But where we'd run into an issue is if that front group that got the gap on me, front group of maybe it was 5 or 6 riders, if they kept pushing hard down through the base of that climb, they would have maintained their gap. And that's really coming to the end of the lap. So I think that climbs with about half a mile left, or maybe less than that. So if they were able to maintain that gap, then I would have had to put in a crazy amount of effort just to catch on to them. And I probably, if I caught them at all, and again, if I had a few other riders to work with to try to catch up to them, if I caught them at all, I will have just used all of my energy and I won't have anything left for the sprint. So that's definitely something to watch going into the final lap. As again, we're through the start-finish banner. Now on the penultimate lap, 2.4 miles left. We'll check in again with kind of how my legs are feeling and where the heart rate's at. Heart rate's at 190. Yes, that's high. Yes, I'm pushing it, but it's nothing crazy. With 2 laps left at Crit City, I'd say that's pretty normal for where I'm at. So I'm feeling all right there. Legs are starting to feel a little bit tired. So I haven't quite been training at the level I would want to be at, or to be in peak condition, I would say. So legs are definitely starting to feel it. But again, nothing awful, especially for a tough race, tough, short, punchy race around Crit City. I am feeling all right. So again, we'll continue to monitor that, but I feel all right. I've kind of had to push the last few times up the end of that little roller section to make sure I don't get dropped as my heart rate starts to get a little bit higher. But I found myself struggling at the very end of those roller sections, so I'd push it up and over that very last hill just to make sure I stayed on. And that's really the only time I get up and out of the saddle at this course. Since there aren't a whole lot of big climbs, I really only find myself out of the saddle maybe 1 or 2 times a race. And it's generally at like the last couple laps when I'm trying to just hold on to the front group while going up those last couple kind of bumps on the rollers. And it's interesting because the first few, the rollers get harder as you go. So the last couple have the highest gradient. So I think that's why it's important to push over the top of the last one, just to make sure you don't get kind of spit out the back of the group. But all that being said, we're exactly where we want to be. We're with the front group coming up on 1 lap left. Perfect position. Heart rate around 192. Feeling all right. Definitely working hard. But I've worked hard throughout the race to get to exactly where I want to be. So we'll see how this plays out. It's starting to string out a little bit as we get to 1 lap left. There was actually a rider who kind of made an attack on the front. I had mentioned earlier, I don't see many attacks being made at Crit City. This is the second last lap, about to start the last lap, but kind of early for an attack. Haven't seen that much at Crit City, but it pretty much gets all stitched back up just as we start this final lap. So kind of an interesting little jump made by that rider. Caused everyone to push a little bit harder, but again, we're back in this group. I used this undraftable power-up, the burrito, and it doesn't really help me much. I think I find myself on the back of this pack anyways. I thought I would make a little bit more of a push and maybe be able to drop someone off the back, but I ended up being the rider in the back. So again, not the end of the world, not the power-up I want on the last lap, but I went ahead and used it. So now I'm working here, just trying to stay on the back of this group. This is where my legs really start to feel it. The last couple times up these last few rollers have been tough. So again, I know that going in, and I kind of push it going over the top at 400 watts, 380 watts, just to make sure there's a little gap opening. And I want to make sure I don't get dropped. So I continue to push it hard over, and that took a lot out of me. So back on with this main group, again, not completely bunched as we're getting closer to the cobbled climb, which is where previously I've seen it more strung out. So I want to make sure I get with this front group if I can. I kind of dropped the watts there. I think my legs were just feeling really tired, and now I'm out of position. Going into this cobbled climb, I'm kind of hanging off the back of this group, which is not where I wanted to be. I noticed that, so I kind of increased the wattage going down. And luckily, no one else made a huge attack here. Again, if someone had attacked there, I think they would have gotten away. But kind of just with soft pedaling, I find myself at the front of the race with just half a mile left. But legs are feeling it, definitely. I'm going to give it all I can to stay with this group and make the sprint finish. As we see another rider kind of right when I got to the front of that pack, that rider on the green Tron bike started to make another attack, and I wasn't quite ready for it. Find myself off the back again, kind of spiking up to 400, 370 watts just to stay on. And now we're only a third of a mile left in this race. So my position is a little bit far back, and it's gotten really strung out. So there's a big gap to the rider in front of me, but then those two riders in front of me are also hanging off the back. And now we're at just 700 feet left. And I've kind of lost the sprint before I even started. So I realize it, I try to step on it, and just don't have it in the legs. So didn't quite make the sprint finish. Unfortunately, I lost that one kind of with about 0.3 miles left. I just didn't stay with the group quite as long as I wanted to. But with all that being said, it's not the end of the world. I got 6th place out of 10 in Zwift Power, and just happy to be back racing. So I hope you enjoyed this race breakdown. If you did, please consider subscribing, because I'll definitely be back with more content, and I can't wait to share it with you. But until next time, this is Caedmon Cycling, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.